I have the privilege now to welcome our first speaker of the day. It is my pleasure to introduce someone who has spoken at every one of our previous conferences and whose presentation is always a highlight of the conference. Eileen Poiley is Director of Education at the USF Health Byrd Alzheimer's Institute in Tampa and has been on the faculty of the university since 1987. Specializing in Alzheimer's and aging, she received her undergraduate degree from the University of Maryland and her graduate degree from Johns Hopkins University. Ms. Poiley directs the Institute's education and training activities for caregivers, healthcare professionals, and the community. She lectures extensively on a variety of topics pertaining to Alzheimer's disease and caregiver issues. She also consults with assisted living facilities on the design for dementia and training for staff. Eileen leads several support groups and is a certified trainer on Alzheimer's disease for the State of Florida Department of Elder Affairs. Please let's welcome Eileen Poiley.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's so nice to be back again. It's nice to be asked to be back again. Traffic was just wonderful from Tampa. I think I hit every traffic delay and accident that there was, but I'm glad to be here. So I was talking to Maria, asking her, so what topic this year? So this year, I'm going to be talking to you on safety issues. I do lead many support groups. I lecture to caregivers all the time, and I do see a lot of issues that come around with safety. So I've been doing this presentation to caregivers, and they have found it very helpful. I'm going to be talking on different aspects of safety, because when we think of safety with seniors, the first thing we think of is the rugs so they don't fall, and little things. I'm going to hopefully bring some things to your attention that you may not have thought about. I'm going to be talking about 4 areas: financial safety, emotional safety, the safety of the person, your loved one who has Alzheimer's, and the safety of others. All right, we don't typically think safety. The first thing is financial safety. I've had numerous caregivers who have come to me and said, I don't know what to do. I just found out my husband's been buying all these things, and I started looking into all these things that were coming in the mail, and now it's up to $32,000, and I don't know what I'm going to do. So I really wanted to include financial safety. The first thing I want to mention is access to the computer. A lot of times people are shoppers online, and it's easier because you can't get out. So you put your password in to Amazon, you put your credit card in. So when you go online, all you have to do is push, click, I like that. Push, click, I'm going to buy that. Well, the problem is, as the person with Alzheimer's progresses, they may not have the decision-making skills, and they may not have the judgment, and they're going to be purchasing things that they shouldn't be purchasing. So you really, and also if you're on the computer on other websites, there's now pop-up ads. And these ads, these companies track you. So they see what your things that you're looking at, and all of a sudden something will come up that they see you've been on or you might like, and it's very easy to click and purchase. So you really want to be very, very careful. You want to make sure that there's a password on the computer that your loved one does not know. And if they have access to the computer, to really take off all passwords, all credit cards. You want to make sure you take over handling the mail. I've had caregivers who have told me that their loved one got information in the mail, and they thought it was a bill when it was a request for a donation, and they paid it. So you really want to be careful with the mail. You also want to be careful with the bills. I would do as many of the bills online, and don't wait until your loved one who's been paying the bills for your whole marriage, all of a sudden, you're getting late notices. People tend to wait until the problem occurs and says, oh my gosh, he can't do that anymore. He may be doing it, but you need to step in and oversee some of the bill paying before bills are not paid or are paid late. The same thing with banking. Some banks, you can even go to the bank and tell them that my loved one is still on the account. He's doing okay. However, he does have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Before anything major is done, new accounts opened, closed, major transactions, could you please notify me so you are aware? Shopping alone, again, if they still can go out, you don't know what they might purchase. Answering the phone. You can purchase lots of things when solicitors call. My mother had Alzheimer's. Both my parents did. My mother bought a cruise. She bought a timeshare visit for 3 days. Oh, she says, it's amazing what you can buy when you're on hold for the doctor and she's listening to this radio station and she's buying all sorts of stuff. The other thing is carrying money and credit cards. So you need to be very aware that financial things can happen and try to be proactive rather than reactive. You don't want to have to deal with a lawyer, deal with certain bills, especially the gentleman who purchased $32,000 worth of stuff. He started credit cards. He did things. Some of it the lawyer was able to get rid of. Some of it they couldn't even find, and he didn't remember, and then she had to pay for the lawyer. So she was always afraid to take over the bills, and she thought, oh yeah, he can still do it. So you need to, don't wait until you realize that they can't, and then take it over. So the other thing of safety people say is emotional safety. What's emotional safety? Emotional safety is the feeling of being safe in your environment and a feeling that you're in the right place. How many of you have had a loved one that says, I want to go home? I want to go home. Okay. That's because when you're in your home, it's familiar. You know you're in the right place, so it's familiar to you. When you have Alzheimer's, it's not always familiar to you. You don't feel safe in this place because you don't think you're in the right place. Safe is the feeling of being, when you go away on a vacation or go stay at someone's house, you can't wait to get back to your own home, in the safety of something that's familiar. So if you see that your loved one's pacing around, they want to leave, I need to go, I want to go home, you need to do a lot of reassurance. You want to reassure them, oh, it's so good to have you here. We have such a beautiful home. You can even put their name up. You know, Mary and John live here. You want to make sure that it's as familiar to them as possible. I had a caregiver not too long ago who came to the support group. He was a pastor of a church in Lakeland. They have been at this church for years, very, very involved in the church. And they have a lot of grandchildren, lots of children, a lot of family, and their pictures all over the house are the family. Well, she kept saying, I got to get out of here. All these people in this house I don't know. All these people, I don't live here. All these people I don't know. She didn't recognize any of the pictures of anyone in the family. And so in her mind, there was all these strangers. She didn't recognize this house, and she tried to leave, so it becomes a safety issue, and it's emotional safety. She never felt safe or comfortable or felt at home. So I told him, I said, as much as you like those pictures, they're not giving her pleasure, and that's what art's supposed to do. I said, but the church still does give her pleasure. I said, so take all of those pictures out, make an area for you to be able to sit and look through the family pictures, and put up pictures of your church, of a prayer book, of stained glass windows. Put up pictures of that. Maybe that will make her feel good. As soon as he changed all the pictures, she walked around the house and she felt safe. She felt happy, and it felt like where she should be. So sometimes you have to be creative, but you really want to make sure that you constantly reassure them that they are in the right place. If they get agitated, sometimes you may need to take them for a ride. Say, okay, let's go home to your house, and take them for a ride, go around the block, come back, and say, look at this, and here we are at your house. If they insist that they want to go to the other house, you can say, oh, I understand you want to go there. They're doing some work on it, and as soon as it's ready, we'll go. Let's go back inside to this beautiful house, and give a short, simple answer, and just continue on and continue to reassure them. All right, now I want to talk about creating a safe environment. I have a handout. I'll be able to get to you in the break, of room by room things that you need to do to make your home safer. So I want to go over, I'm not going to go over every single detail because I do have the handout for you, but I'm going to go over what it means to have a safe environment and how that interacts with the person with Alzheimer's. When you're dealing with just an older adult who has no cognitive issues, you know, it's critical still to have a safe environment to keep them independent, prevent accidents, but you can reason with them, you can explain what you are doing, and they can participate. However, when you're dealing with somebody who has Alzheimer's disease, it's going to require more thought and planning. You need a good understanding of the disease because you really need to know what things need to be changed. And again, I want you to learn how to be proactive rather than wait for that accident and then think, oh my gosh, I should have changed that. I should have saw that coming. So I'm going to go over how cognitive loss, visual changes, hallucinations, you need to understand those and how they affect the safety in the home. So the person with Alzheimer's disease is not always aware of the extent of their deficit. They may be aware of some of the changes, but they're typically not aware of all of the changes. So they're not going to see the need for what you are doing. They're going to resist if you're doing anything that they may think is child-proofing, limiting access. They may even get angry at some of the changes and definitely are not going to participate. So it's going to be a little more of a challenge for you because you're not going to be able to explain or reason or logically say it. You can say it to them, oh, I'm making changes, you know, we're getting older, and I don't want to have an accident. I know I'm clumsy, or I know I might do something, and just kind of blame it on yourself, or, oh, we always have the family over, and you know what, I just want to make this house safer for our visitors. Don't say you're doing it for them. All right, so a person with Alzheimer's, I'm speaking to the choir. You all are caregivers, so this is definitely something everybody knows. But just to review, obviously they can be very easily confused, and they have short-term memory issues. So you may say something to them, oh, be careful of that when you come in, but again, you have to be aware, I can't remind them of safety issues because they have a memory problem. So the other problem is they're going to remember the past and what they used to do. They may no longer see themselves as an 85-year-old man, and they may still see themselves as a younger person still working. An example, I had a caregiver call me in hysterics. They didn't know what to do. Her husband was an electrician by trade. Now has Alzheimer's, hasn't worked in 20 years, but he thinks he's still working and thinks he's an electrician. And he's walking around the house with scissors trying to cut all the wires. So it's very much of a dangerous situation. He does not see himself as an older man. So yes, you are going to have somebody, oh, I didn't know, we've had lawn service now for 5-10 years. He hasn't done the lawn in ages. Well, then why is all the lawnmower stuff still in your garage? Oh, we haven't gotten rid of it, but he hasn't used it. He now thinks he's 20 years younger. He's wandering about the house, walks into the garage. He sees it, looks outside, lawn's high, goes out, mows it. Can he still do it safely? That's a chance you take. So if something is not being used, especially in the garage, get rid of it. Because don't assume, oh, they haven't touched that in 10 years. They may think they're 15 years younger than they used to be. If they don't recognize you, they don't recognize their children, you don't know where they are in their life, where they think they are, and a whole period of having lawn service is all of a sudden forgotten. So you need to be careful. They don't have the same level of judgment of what is safe and what is not. One gentleman who did go out with the lawnmower actually mowed the lawn, did a fine job, mowed the shrubs, mowed the flowers, mowed the weeds, mowed everything. Luckily, he did not hurt himself. But again, that's the problem that you have. There was no judgment as to what to mow. He mowed the lawn. So they may not always remember all the safety components of using things. So be very aware of any household electrical appliances and electrical things. Any tools that they used to use, get rid of. If your wife was a cook and has tons of electrical gadgets, get rid of a lot of them. Go back to a manual can opener. The less electrical and appliances, the less potential danger you can come up with, you can have. Caregivers. Caregivers, They're aware of their loved ones' deficits, but they're not always aware of the limitations. They may still think that they can do it. And sometimes caregivers will say to me, well, I'll know when I'm waiting for, when I can tell he can't do that. There's not a sign that when you wake up one day that's going to say, okay, today's the day you can no longer let him do this. Today's the day he can no longer drive. Today's the day you can't leave him alone. Today's the day he can't go on, on the computer. There's not going to be this epiphany for you to tell you. So oftentimes you're taking things or changing or doing things before it may be necessary because you want to make sure you prevent the problem. So you have to be aware of that. I'll talk about leaving them home alone and how to know if that's a good, what's the safety issues and how to judge if someone can be left home alone. It's hard to take things away. The biggest thing that we find caregivers hate is when they take away their driving. That's a very, very difficult thing. And to say, well, I think he can still drive, I'm not sure. We do a driving evaluation at the Institute, so you really want to make sure that you take have their driving checked so you know for sure that they're able to. Caregivers can be creatures of habit. I mean, you've been in a relationship, a spouse, a parent with this person for years, and you're in this routine, and also sometimes you have to stop or have somebody else come in and say, okay, I may not be able to stand back and see things. Can you help identify where I probably should be putting more emphasis on some safety things? So you don't want to live in the past. You have to be aware of what's going on now and have someone to really help you with identifying some safety concerns. All right, home alone is a big issue. How long can you leave somebody home alone? Some questions to ask. One, medical problem. If they have a medical problem, would they be able to deal with it? If they're having problems and all of a sudden they cut themselves, would they know what to do? If they fall, would they be able to push the button if they have one? Would they be able to handle any kind of a medical emergency that they may have? Can they respond to other emergencies? The smoke alarm goes off. Could they handle that? They drop a glass and now there's glass all over the floor. Would they know how to handle that? I had a caregiver who was cutting food and was trying to cut an apple and cut it this way. Cut their hand and it was bleeding. They knew to go to the caregiver, but by the time he found his wife in the house, he had been bleeding for a while, and now he's looking for her. By the time he found her, he had no idea what he did, and he did not have the ability to handle it. So those are some of the things. Can they handle an emergency? They leave the water on, there's a flood. They leave a pot on, there's smoke. Someone knocks at the door. Somebody calls on the phone. What would they know to do? Would they do things that maybe they thought they should be doing? That they see a pile of clothes in a basket next to the machine, that's a trigger. Would they attempt to do laundry and do it incorrectly? Would they go wandering through rooms and see things, not realizing, like I said before, oh, I haven't used those tools in a while, or I haven't mowed the lawn in a while. So you have to be aware, how will they handle being alone and seeing things? Would that trigger behavior, or are they able to be at home and really stay safe? Now, when I ask caregivers, are they at a risk for wandering? People say, oh, no, they don't wander. Again, you don't know when they may wander. Over 50% of all individuals with Alzheimer's will wander, and you can't tell me the day that may happen. The other thing is how you define wandering. Some people say, oh, well, that's like aimlessly just walking about. Well, a person with Alzheimer's loses the concept of time. So let's say they are doing okay, and they're still safe to stay home alone, and all these things, there's not really a problem. However, you know they have a problem with the concept of time because you can leave the house, and you say to them, I'm just going to run up to Publix, I'll be back in a half an hour. And you get back in a half an hour, and they are pacing and so upset. You say, what's the matter? What's the matter? You've been gone for hours. Where were you? That's your sign that they no longer understand the passing of time. So don't be surprised if the next time you leave and you say, I'll be back in an hour, and you're back in 45 minutes and you think, oh, I'm doing great, I'm ahead of schedule, and they're outside looking for you. They may not be wandering, as people might define it, but they are. They're wandering off from where they should be. Their reasoning for wandering is not just to aimlessly go about town. Their reasoning at this point is to find you because they think you've been gone for hours. So you have to kind of see how they do if you leave, and then how are they when you come back. The other issue is, can they call 911 if they need to? Can they still safely stay home alone and handle potential problems? Do they happen often? No, but when someone has Alzheimer's, you have a higher risk of a problem happening that they need to be able to handle. All right, I'm not going to get too much into the diseases, just a little bit about the relationship with safety. So Alzheimer's disease, because it is a progressive decline, the problem is you may think, okay, I've got everything under control, I've got my safety things in place. Well, 6 months later, your loved one has changed. Their abilities have changed. So you need to continuously monitor any type of safety precautions. You may think, okay, at this point they're doing fine, they're able to do this, they're still able to drive, they're able to be home alone. You need to keep monitoring that and see how they're doing and what deficits you see are changing and where their cognitive abilities are. Keep in mind they have short-term memory loss, so they're going to keep going back in time, and if you tell them things about safety, they're not going to remember. So, and I talked about the loss of the concept of time. So those things with Alzheimer's will all affect safety issues. Lewy body dementia, they will have hallucinations. So for them, you need to be aware of triggers that could increase hallucinations, because some hallucinations could be that they see things, it could be a safety issue, it could create emotional distress and affect their emotional safety. They also have Parkinson-like symptoms, so they're going to have more physical issues. They may have problems with balance and problems with walking, and because they have memory problems, they may not remember to always use the walker or to use the cane, so they may not be able to take precautions. So again, there's some safety issues there. Vascular, the only thing with vascular dementia is it's a stair-step kind of decline. They're going to have a problem, they'll be doing fine, have like a mini stroke and have a decline, have a mini stroke and have a decline. And you never know when they may have that mini stroke, and you don't know where in the brain, so you don't always know where the area of deficits are going to hit. So you have to also monitor just to kind of see how they're doing. We also see quite often mixed dementia, which is Alzheimer's disease and vascular dementia. So you may have to watch out for both of these. The last one I want to mention is frontotemporal dementia. So frontotemporal dementia, anybody here dealing with frontotemporal dementia? Okay, frontotemporal dementia, they don't have the same level of memory impairment, but what they have is a loss of impulse control, and they also may loss of social etiquette. They may say and do things that are inappropriate. They can get somebody upset if they're in a store. They can, you may go into the store and see a cute little girl and say, oh, what a cute little girl, where they may think that they're going to follow her. So someone may think they're stalking them. I had a gentleman, a family in a seminar who told me that in May, when all the graduation parties were going on last year, their neighbors were having a party, and it was a very happy graduation party, but the gentleman with frontotemporal dementia saw all these kids, saw all this noise, saw all this commotion, and he went over there and he was ready to start fights because he thought they were really, in his mind it could have been a gang. He misunderstood what he was seeing, and his impulse control was go over there and start trouble. So you have to be aware that they may act in a different way than when they did not have the FTD. And they're not going to have that same level of reasoning and knowing right from wrong. They're also going to have personality changes, so you have to be aware that, well, they never used to do that before, where now they're going to do things that they would never have done. All right, the big thing I want to talk about that people don't always realize, especially for those of you who are in the earlier stages of caregiving, just for you to be aware. A lot of times people will say to me, oh, you work with Alzheimer's. That's the disease where people are forgetful and lose their memory. Yes, but if that's all it was, caregivers probably could handle that. But there's so much more than just memory. So a person with Alzheimer's loses short-term memory. They can remember things from the past, but they can't remember things in the short term. So I could say to Maria, why don't we have lunch tomorrow? And both of us will take that and we'll say, yeah, sure, we'll meet at your place at 1 o'clock. How's that? Great. And both of us can insert that conversation in our brain. Wake up tomorrow and say, oh, right, I'm having lunch with Maria at 1 o'clock at her facility, her office, and I know where I'm going. A person with Alzheimer's disease, you could say to your mom, I'm going to come over tomorrow and I'm going to take you to lunch. How's that sound? In the moment, mom's going to say, oh, that sounds wonderful. The next day, you're going to get up. You remember you're going to mom's. You're going to show up at 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock for lunch, and mom's sitting there eating. And you say, Mom, what are you doing? I told you we were going out to lunch. You did not. So mom doesn't have the ability to save information. Therefore, she cannot recall it later. In that case, just to give you, I know there's a speaker later talking on communication. In that case, your answer, just for those who are curious, you don't sit there and try and remind mom, oh, I told you yesterday. You just say, oh, you're eating lunch? Great. That's what I came over to have lunch with you. I'm going to pull up a chair and join you. But with regard to safety, that shows you can't tell them something this afternoon about safety. I'm going to go out for a while. I don't want you to start anything for dinner because I'm going to come home and I want to cook with you. Okay? Yeah, sure, no problem. I'll wait for you. You get home at 4 o'clock and the pots are all boiling away. So they may agree in the moment, but they can't save that conversation. So later on, when the thought comes to them, or they're not going to remember anything that you tell them. So you need to be aware how that short-term memory affects them. It's a matter of they can't save, and if you don't save it, you can't recall it. So you may give them, say, oh, I'm going to go to the store, I'm going to be back in an hour. So you just relax, and you'll be here, and you'll be fine. You leave, and 30 minutes, 10 minutes later, they don't remember. You can write on a whiteboard, I'm at the store, bullet, next bullet. I will be back soon, next bullet. You are safe. Very simple. Will it always work? No, but it does work for many, and especially earlier on. That's something to try. So they lose the ability to problem solve, logical thinking. They lose the ability to use reasoning, executive functioning. Something as simple as you go and you plug in a lamp and you turn it on and it's not working. Well, maybe this lamp is connected to the switch. Maybe the bulb's broken. Maybe you're not sure. You would have the ability to know, okay, well, I had it on and it was on for a little while and then I turned it off, but I'm not going to check the bulb now because it could be hot. I could burn myself. I'm not going to take the plug and yank it from the cord. There's just a lot of safety issues. So you don't know how well their problem-solving skills are to do things that could have safety issues. Executive functioning is the ability to multitask, to plan bigger things that have components to them, planning an event, planning something in the house, planning you have a problem and there's a leak in the bathroom and you need to either decide how to fix it, you need to go call some plumbers, you need to turn off the water because it's still running, you need to get some towels. It could be a simple problem, but they may no longer have those abilities because that's executive functioning, is the ability to plan something and complete a more detailed and complex task. Abstract thinking, decision-making, and then just overall decreased ability in really being able to follow through and handle a task. Even just banking and billing, you get the statement, you want to compare it with your checks, maybe your credit cards, compare it with the receipts. It could be very difficult for someone to do some of these tasks. Judgment call, making a good judgment requires you to be able to say, okay, I'm making a judgment, meaning I'm making a decision, whether it be what to wear, what to do, any kind of decision, and I have to make a judgment. You have to be able to analyze the different aspects. If I were to say to you, all right, go get dressed, you could say, okay, it is summer, it is St. Pete, Florida, we're going to the park today, I know what to wear. Because you can take the cues of what someone told you, your judgment and decision-making ability is there. You're able to say, okay, go on my decision-making of what I'm going to wear. You can pick different outfits. How many of you ever wondered why it could be hot out and all of a sudden your caregiver, your loved one will come out in sweats? Because they don't have the ability to take the cues of where they live, the cues of where they're going, the cues of the time of the year, make a good judgment. So all of these skills are not there. And if you see it in one area of their life, then you need to realize it could be there in another area of their life. Just simple tasks. You know, I had some caregiver who her mother had all these kitchen gadgets, and she was trying to get the blender to work. Well, if you get the blender stuck, you need to be careful. If you put a wooden spoon and you get it unstuck, you could all of a sudden, you know, it could really blow, you know, not explode, but you could have a mess if you don't put the lid on. If you try and break the ice, she had stuff in there, and she started to move it with her hand. I mean, you could really have some serious injury if they're no longer able to understand the components of something. Speech and word finding, they may have trouble coming up with words. They may have trouble, you know, understanding what you're saying. People think that someone can't read. A lot of times they can read, but you have to also know, can they comprehend what they read? There's a difference between reading a novel and just reading simple words. Reading a novel, you have to remember chapter 1 and the characters and the plot to understand chapter 2. But if you write a simple board or whiteboard, I'm at the store, next line, I will be back soon, next line, you are safe. You know, they may be able to read 3 simple lines much easier than reading a paragraph. So don't just assume. If you ever want to test to see if your loved one is still able to comprehend, you can kind of play a game where you put pieces of paper and you write on it, clap your hands, close your eyes on one, stomp your feet, write things on there and put them in a hat and say, okay, we're each going to pick one and do what it says and see if they're reading it and understanding it, or are they just reading it. I've had people say, oh yeah, my husband gets up and he reads the whole paper, puts it in the recycling, lies on the sofa for a while, takes a nap, gets up. Where's the paper? I haven't read the paper. Goes back, reads the paper, and it's just a habit. He's not comprehending, but he is, quote, reading the paper. So if you really want to see, you can kind of see, and that'll tell you, maybe they can't read a novel, but these simple little phrases, they're still able to comprehend because they were able to do what it said on those. Attention and concentration. Sequencing, they may no longer be able to do things in the correct order. That's a cognitive skill that people don't think about. But if you're going to make something on the stove and heat it up, you don't always want to put a glass dish on the stove, get it hot, then add the water. So just simple little things. Even, you shave in the morning, there's an order to how you do things. So sometimes if you do things in the wrong order, that can create a safety problem. Their attention span may be affected. Their concentration may be affected. So be aware. The other changes I want to mention that can affect safety is visual changes. One big one is depth perception. So if you have a blue sofa and a blue carpet, if you have depth perception problems, you're not going to know if one is 16 inches higher. It may literally look like a flat plane. They may have trouble going over thresholds. You may see a loved one, like from leaving this floor to the tile, they may hesitate because their depth perception is off and they can't determine the level of the 2 different surfaces. So you really want to make sure you have good color contrast, good lighting to avoid shadows. Physical changes, they may have some decreased balance and coordination, and movements may be slower. So again, that can greatly affect potential safety issues. People ask about hearing. Usually their hearing doesn't change because of the Alzheimer's. It could because of aging. A lot of people obviously need hearing aids. But what happens is their ability to interpret what they hear may not be as well. That's where the change may occur. So these are just some quick pictures of depth perception. So if you, and we don't have a lot of 2 stories in Florida, which is good, but if you see stairs like that going down and you have depth perception, it'll almost look like a slide. So even like 3 or 4 steps to get into a building may be very overwhelming for somebody. If you can see the one on the left, it really doesn't look like stairs. And if you have depth perception, it'll look even less like stairs. The one on the right is very dark, and again, all the same color. Now the one on the left going up is nice. It's open, it's lit, it's got a handle, it's got colors of the steps. But if you look at the one on the left as well as the one on the right, before the one on the right, you can see it was all too close to the same color. So going up, it was hard to tell. So they painted it green on the inside. The problem is when you're going down the steps, which is where the safety issue is more of a problem, you're not going to see that green. So that's the thing where you need to really put a color at the tip of each step. Some other things to be aware of is lighting, reducing shadows. They may see that shadow as a person or as an object, and it may be something that could upset them. So also avoid floor lamps, anything that they may think that they can hold on to but is not stable. Floor lamps, a table that's a pedestal table, like this one is sturdier, but some people have a pedestal, so it's only got support in the middle as opposed to the 4 legs, is not very safe. You want to avoid the incandescent bulbs because they get hot, and the halogen bulbs, and use the fluorescent bulbs. You want to make sure if you have any night lights, they always are ones that don't get hot and have a shield over them. Behaviors, I'm just going to mention quickly. You get into some of the behaviors and they will affect safety issues. Hallucinations and delusions. Hallucinations when they see things or feel things that are not there. So you want to be aware of things in the house that can possibly trigger hallucinations because they can create, they may see or hear their parent who is deceased calling them, and they may think they need to go to them, and next thing you know, they're wandering, and you say, where are you going? Well, my mother said I need to come over because they're having a hallucination. You want to be careful of what may be triggering it. One thing that is a definite trigger is watching the news. What's the news? Crime report. Is the news happy? No. So if they hear on the news, oh, there's been a rash of robberies in Seminole, and the police are looking for the person who may have done this, and next thing you know, they see a shadow outside or they hear noises, they may start assuming that's the person. So now they're going to be fearful. They may try to leave. They may be very uneasy, so it affects their emotional safety. It can cause them to do things because of what these hallucinations are. So if your loved one is having hallucinations, you need to be aware of what triggers them and to make sure that it doesn't cause a safety issue. Delusions are belief in something that is not true. There's 2 types of delusions. Some delusions you can control, and some delusions are caused by the disease. For instance, I had a couple in Sun City that she was the caregiver. He had Alzheimer's. She would go and greet the mailman every morning and was always excited to see him. She always knew his name. And her husband accused her of having an affair because you go and greet him, he comes to visit you every day, and he always brings you presents. So they will misinterpret very common everyday things, and that delusion, now he might be paranoid, now he might try, and he's not going to be as receptive to his wife. So it's going to affect the whole dynamics. That's an easy one. Stop getting the mail, close the blinds when the mailman's there, and at 3 o'clock you go and you get the mail out of the mailbox, and that delusion will eventually fade away. The ones that won't is when you have an older gentleman or female that's the patient, and they no longer see themselves as elderly. So for instance, I had 2 caregivers. They were both in their 60s taking care of their mom. The dad was deceased, and they lived near each other. Each had a home with a room set up for mom, identical. So she was able to safely go back and forth for a while until she started getting very inappropriate with her adult son. She wanted to be too close to him. She wanted to come in bed in the middle of the night and sleep with him. She always loved her daughter-in-law. Now she hates the daughter-in-law. She started calling the son by her deceased husband's name. She didn't recognize herself in the mirror. So I said to them, I said, "Do you look like your father?" He said, "Oh, we could be twins." So she literally was going back in her years, didn't think of herself as 85, no longer recognized the children or grandchildren because she didn't think she had grandchildren that old. So she thought her son was her husband. So in that case, there's not much you can do. They had to move her. So some delusions you can't change. But if they see a shadow that they think is something else, which is more of an illusion, hallucinations is when they see something that they think is real, but you know is not there. So they may say, "Oh, I can't handle all these kids in the room." So they hear something, but you know it's not there. An illusion is when they see something that is in the room, but they misinterpret what it is. So they see pictures in the room, and now they're scared because all these strange people are there. They look out the window, and the shrub is shaped, and it almost, in the shadows in the evening, looks like a person. And now there's always this person watching me. So they're home alone, and they look outside, and there's that person. It could be very fearful. You don't know what they're going to do. So illusions is the opposite of it. I had another one. I have a bunch of examples, but just to give you another one, a family moved their mom into the home, redid a room for her, and everything was fine. And then as summer approached, they started putting the fan on in her room. Well, they put a fan up to put in her room because it was so warm. And she started screaming. She was trying to run out of the house. She was up all night, wandering around. They couldn't figure out why she was so upset. She wanted to leave. And then finally, one night, she screamed, "I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to fly, I don't want to fly." The fan they put looked like propellers of an airplane. Once they took the fan down, she calmed down and she was fine. So sometimes you need to look at some of the triggers and some of the things that they see, and they may see very differently. I had a gentleman who wouldn't use his walker and fell, and they couldn't figure out why they couldn't get him to use his walker until he finally said, "Don't lock me up." That metal walker, when they put it in front of him, he thought was a fence. So they covered, I said, cover the whole front of it with material in a color that he likes. Once it no longer looked like a fence, he was willing to use it. So it's sometimes you have to be a little bit of a detective, but just to be aware how they see the world around them and how they perceive things can affect safety issues. Just a little fun for you when we talk about illusions. If you look at the picture on the left, what does everybody see? A face? Okay, I want you to turn your head so your left ear is touching your left shoulder. Now what do you see? Liar. Everybody see both? What do you see on the right? Face. And everyone see a saxophone player? Okay. So when you first looked at that, you each saw something immediately. I told you to keep looking at it to see the other thing. Some people will look at that and see the word liar. Some people immediately looked at that and saw a face. Your loved one is going to look at something and immediately see it, and it may not be what you see. So you need to look at something and really see what they see. The one on the left here is very difficult. It is an old lady and it is a young woman. Does everybody see both? That's a difficult one. What about the one on the right? Everybody see the word lift? That's a difficult one. You have to look at the white, not the black. So these are just illusions, just to give you an idea how your loved one is going to always perceive something, and it may not be the way you perceive it. So you need to kind of see, how are they seeing things? Or when we're sitting in the evening and he sits in his favorite recliner and he's looking out the window, what is he looking at? Is he looking at the shrubs and the trees and they're blowing and you got the tree branch with that hanging bird feeder that's been there for years that's now swaying? How is he seeing that? Is he seeing that as something that could be fearful, that he's going to think he needs to go outside and get rid of, he needs to leave because he sees somebody coming in? So you need to be kind of aware. Make sure when they're sitting, if they sit all day in a recliner or they have their favorite spot, I want you to sit in that spot and I want you to look around at different times of the day with different lighting, different shadows, and I want you to look around and see, is there anything here that creates shadows that, I see a door, and I could be really afraid because I don't know where to go. And they're going to stand up and all they're going to see are doors. Take a look at the room from their perspective. This I got off of a popular art site for art. These were popular ones picked. What do you think they could look like? Fire. I heard somebody say it. This top one is rain with the umbrellas. The bottom is just called the wave. And the one on the right is called city scene. If you have Alzheimer's, they could all look like fire, which could be create a lot of fear in them. So you want to be aware of your visual environment. You want to be aware of abstract art. You want to monitor the artwork. Like I told you earlier, you may see the family as this lovely artwork, and they may see it as scary because there's all these strangers in their house. So you need to monitor your artwork. You want to monitor if they recognize themselves in a mirror. A lot of people with Alzheimer's do not. So if you have a lot of mirrors around your house, again, they are going to think there's strangers in the home. I've had some people tell me we've had some focus groups. Some said that they thought they were company and they fed all the pictures or they talked to the person in the mirror. I've had some said that one of them, the gentleman, actually had a fist fight with all the strangers because she had so many mirrors around that he kept seeing this stranger following him around the house because he no longer recognized his reflection. If there's doors you don't want your loved one in, you want to paint the door and the door frame the exact same color as the wall, and you want a very simple, straight little handle with a cap on it. You want to completely camouflage it so it blends into the wall. The room you want them to go in, you want that molding to be a different contrasting color. You want to put pictures on either side or some flowers. You draw attention to the areas you want them to go, and you literally de-emphasize the areas that you don't want them to go. You may assume everybody knows that this room is the kitchen. Well, make sure there's pictures on the wall of food. You go into some restaurants and they put pictures to stimulate your appetite. You may have to do some cueing. Put a picture on the bathroom door of a toilet. You may say, well, that bathroom's been in the same space. We've been in this house 30 years. Well, now they walk down the hall and all they see are a bunch of doors. And you wonder, why are they going in the garage? They never did. Maybe they were looking for the bathroom. But put a stop sign on the rooms you don't want them to go and put a picture of the bathroom so they can recognize it easily. These are just examples of some artwork I've seen in facilities. That's very abstract. For someone with Alzheimer's, is that going to give them pleasure, or could that be misinterpreted and be something that they find fearful? This is a bit overwhelming. Collage walls are very popular now. I tried to find a picture of one that was a little overwhelming. That's a little overwhelming. And the bigger problem with this picture is having them up the steps. You want them to focus on holding on and looking at the steps, not looking at the artwork on the wall. What would be wrong with the picture here on the left? If you have a depth perception problem, what do you think that's going to look like? Solid pink. It's not going to look like a flower, solid pink. The one on the right gives you perspective, is it going to look like a flower? The one on the left looks like a piece of yellow with brown circles. The one on the right's a little better, but that's a hard flower. I had someone said, oh, that looks kind of like a cup with coffee at the bottom. So again, you have to be careful. If your loved one picks up a flower to drink it, you think, well, cup of coffee with, So you have to be very aware of how they're going to perceive things. I saw this picture on the left. I thought that was great. Those are flowers. What do they look like? faces. So you put that around and you wonder why that they're getting very scared, that there's all these little, and if you have someone who's paranoid, that's going to really scare them. I saw the picture on the right. Monet is a famous artist. Why is that not a good choice for someone with Alzheimer's? It's very muted. They're going to see that as just a blob of blue and nothing. It's not going to have enough contrast. So yes, they may have loved art in their younger years, but that type of art is not going to give them any pleasure because they're not going to see it as well anymore. All right, looking at these pictures, the one on the left you would think, oh, well, that's a beautiful formal picture of a little girl. However, it gives you no perspective. You don't see the background, so it almost looks like a floating head is on the wall. So you need to be very careful with that. I've had caregivers who said that their loved one thought pictures were, their grandchildren were just hanging there. The one on the top is a very cute picture. They went to the fair, they got their face painted, but that's for grandma when grandma did not have Alzheimer's. Once grandma has Alzheimer's, these cute pictures may be cute and artistic, but they're not appropriate. So you need to make sure that you check your loved ones, if it's your mom or if it's your spouse, you need to check all your pictures and you need to really make sure that you're putting ones that are very, very appropriate. These two are pictures of, you see a background, you see smiling children, you can get perspective, and you can definitely tell that they're better pictures. The one on the right's my favorite because that's my daughter's. Why are these bad pictures? I tell facilities, oh, use pictures of animals. Most people love pictures of animals. Yes, cute puppies, cute kittens, cute little animals. If you have someone who's got paranoia, this is going to scare the daylights out of somebody. So yes, you need to be careful of pictures when you do nature pictures. These are what I refer to as very good nature pictures. The other thing to be aware of, and I tried finding a good picture, if you are a northerner that you have been living here for 10 years, your loved one may not recognize Christmas in Florida. They may recognize pictures, Christmas lights on a palm tree, that took a long time to get used to. So you may need to find, but pictures of winter scenes were so white, I couldn't find a good contrast. You can, if your loved one still loves Christmas, there is no reason why you can't have beautiful pictures of Christmas trees and things up on your walls all year long. Don't take things down. If they like that picture and it brings them joy, put it up there. So you need to, and if you can find a really nice winter scene, if that's where they grew up, they may prefer that and find that stimulates more good memories of years ago than the Florida scenes. I tried to get mountains and hills, but that, again, became all green, and that was a hard picture as well. I have a handout. I'm just going to mention just a few things, but I have a handout if anybody wants that goes, of all these slides, it goes room by room on home safety. The big thing is, don't think you need to do these things proactively. Oh yeah, we've had guns, he hasn't used them in years. Get rid of them. If someone has Alzheimer's, there should absolutely not be guns in the house, period. Should not be. You want to remove poisonous plants. Alcohol needs to be locked. Medicine needs to be locked and out of sight. Putting an alarm on the doors so you know if your loved one is leaving. I talked about mirrors. Handrails, bathrooms, and stairs. You want to keep things safe as possible. You want sturdy chairs with arms, no chairs with wheels. You want to keep it safe. Kitchen and bathroom are where you have your most possible problems. I would decrease your water temperature, so if by chance they turn the cold off first, they won't scald themselves. If your loved one is still able to live alone or spends time alone during the day, someone needs to monitor their food and making sure that there's nothing that's expired or soiled. Beware of look-alike products. A jar of applesauce, apple juice, and a floor cleaner. And we look at dish detergent, and it'll say, the Dawn dish detergent's in a big bottle, could look like a juice bottle, and it's got pictures of lemons and grapefruits all over it. Looks like fruit. There's a lot of lookalikes. A canister of Ajax, green, and Parmesan cheese. There's a lot of lookalikes, so you need to be aware of those. Removing things that are triggers. Don't put a big bowl of fresh fruit right next to the butcher block of knives. You're asking for trouble. Bathroom safety, the first thing I would do with the bathroom safety is remove all the electrical things so that they're not near water, and take the lock off the door. So if they are in there, they cannot lock themselves and fall, and then you can't get in and they can't get to the door. Get rid of the bathroom door locks. Reduce your water temperature, get a sturdy seat, and be aware that your bathroom is not all white. You want some color contrast. Bedroom safety, these are pretty obvious. I've talked about these. Keeping the path to the bathroom clear, using night lights, removing a lot of mirrors, reducing clutter. You don't want to have a dresser that has, oh, we have the nail polish there, and we still have lotion, and we've got powder, and we've got perfume. It's too many things, and if they can't read, they may use things incorrectly and could create a safety hazard, especially in the bathroom. If there's perfume, and then there's toothpaste, and then there's the blue mouthwash next to the Windex, too many things that you're expecting them to remember. Well, but that one has a spray trigger. Well, that one is the refill bottle of Windex next to the scope. So you really want to declutter and make sure that things are easy for them to comprehend. The last thing, and then I know I'm over, but the last thing just to keep in mind that I started with, Alzheimer's is a progressive disease. Your loved one will continue to progress. Some progress very, very slow. Some may progress a little quicker. You know, we have some that the range is 2 to 20 years. So that means some are going to go quickly and some are going to progress very slowly. So you need to constantly be monitoring them, monitor safety problems. Sometimes it might be helpful to have a care manager to hire someone, a home health care. Someone who's knowledgeable, say, I just would like to pay to have someone come in and do a safety assessment on my house of someone who knows what they're looking for, because you may not be aware of some of the things to look for. So you want to really keep them safe, keep you safe, so they can have good quality of life and remain healthy and independent as long as possible. Well, I will stay throughout the day, so I will answer any questions. Feel free to come up to me, and I will have the room-by-room guide for anybody who would like. So, thank you all very much.